Hello all, it's me. How are we doing today? What I've got for you today is an examination of some of the occurrences that have come to my attention in regards to Jason Arday. As you're already aware, I've written quite a few things about this, and there's a new blog to go with this on X or on Substack that looks at the dangerous nature of affinity groups. So it's in that arena that I want us to primarily stick today in this short video, explaining some of my thoughts as I try to get my head around this. We've seen the most extraordinary behaviors from people over the last 48 to 72 hours, in some ways behaviors which I think are incredibly dangerous. But I'll come to that shortly. So to begin with, I want us to focus on something I found from Question Time in 2024, in which a discussion is being had around the ethics and morality of parliamentarians. And Arday is on the Question Time panel. How he got there is anybody's guess, but I imagine it's also to do with everything that's been discussed about the case in the past week. So let's take a look and see what happened on that particular episode of Question Time.
I think it's a difficult situation. I think the most important thing, which seems to be lost within this parliamentary discourse, is the preservation of human life and peace. And I think
notice the use of the word parliamentary, the words parliamentary discourse. That's a particular type of language, particular beloved of critical social justice activists, queer theorists and postmodernists. It's a particular type of language, a way of discussing things. Let's continue.
What has happened with this political football, actually, no one's come out of it looking well. And seldom do we actually see parliamentarians be contrite about some of their behaviours.
The political football he's discussing is whether or not parliamentarians are using Gaza to make hay, i.e. to make themselves appear better, to virtue signal about it, in other words. And he's saying, rarely do we see parliamentarians show contrition. He's preaching. That's what he's doing. Let's keep going.
In the chamber, I think what we've observed with Sir Lindsay Hall is there has been contrition. He made a mistake, and
He's now talking about Lindsay Hall, who he says has been contrite about a mistake that he's made, a mistake based on his belief system, obviously. And he's glad that he's made that contrition, and he holds him up as somebody who has been contrite about something that he thinks needs contrition, a heretical idea that he doesn't approve of. Again, he's preaching.
I think given his pretty exemplary record in terms of in the House, I do think he needs to be given the benefit of doubt, and we actually need to focus on the work that needs to be done. And the work that needs to be done is to really coalesce, or for parliamentarians to coalesce around a permanent ceasefire that really recognises the sanctity of preserving the kind of human condition.
Right. He's a good man at heart. Look at him. He is a good man at heart, but the problem is he's a fantasist and or fabulist, as they call it. That's a great word, isn't it? Fabulist. And the problem is that this type of thinking that he's displaying here is pure fantasy. It's pure fantasy. But you can see that the entire thing is based on the idea that in order to be seen correctly, one must be contrite, and that contrition must be public. I think he's preaching. I'm sure you'll tell me whether you do in the comments. The nature of the thinking processes and the philosophy behind the likes of Arday and his cohorts at Cambridge in the education department is blatantly obvious to me. It is simply the effect of and the slavish adherence to equality, diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, whichever way you cut it, whatever you want to call it. This is a dangerous ideology that is held up by group, essentially obedience, by collectivism, and by a very strange and peculiar underlying philosophy that belies truth, reality, adult decision-making, critical thinking, and everything else that comes with that civilizational backbone which gave us the luxury in which we live today. These beliefs are luxury beliefs. There's no getting away from it. If we had to worry about where the next glass of water was coming from, none of this would be happening. This is why the arguments take place between the elites in the likes of Cambridge and the elites in the media who spit back at them. This never was anything to do with making the world more equal. And I think it's time we abandon the concept that EDI or DEI has got anything to do with that. But it took a particularly disturbing turn yesterday at a vigil being held for this man as if he was some kind of Martin Luther King or as if he was some kind of saintly hero, which of course is what they are attempting to create. They're attempting to martyr him for their cause, and I'll be writing about that shortly as a process. What we see is the crowd in London, and then they begin in unison to chant his name. Watch this.
So whenever we say his name, we say, Professor Jason Arday. Professor Jason Arday.
It struck me then, when I saw it for the first time yesterday, and it still strikes me now, that it has a terrible resonance with something I once saw in a film. You tell me whether what you've just seen resonates with this.
His name is Robert Paulson.
His name is Robert Paulson.
His name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson.
Come on, guys,
His
please,
name
stop it.
is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson.
This is over with!
His name is Robert Paulson. 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 His name is Robert Paulson.
Great film, Fight Club, don't get me wrong, love it. But the whole point was Project Mayhem, and they were a cult. What do you think we are seeing? What do you think it is that we are having to deal with? There's a great scene in Cabaret where the old guy sings in the garden, "Tomorrow Belongs to Me." And as Liza Minnelli and her other actors playing the parts leave, they go to get in a car. And the rise of the fascist movement, the rise of the collectivism of fascism is happening. One turns to the other and says, do you really think you can still control them? I think these people are dangerous. I think the thinking behind it is dangerous. I think we've seen it before in history, which I shall prove to you in a future article. And I think we saw it many, many years ago with the death of Diana, the deification of an individual. And this strikes me as being an attempt to provide martyrdom, to deify, in order to push their cause forward. And the truth, whatever it may be, matters not one whit. You have to remember, these people think reality is created by language. Therefore, if they say it enough, it becomes a truth. That's why they attack history. That's why they enter schools. That's why they attempt to change the history so that your child does not know the history of the civilizational backbone that brought us here, the Enlightenment, meritocracy, intelligence, talent, excellence. They're doing it to your kids in school. I've got a seminar coming up about that. I'll stick the picture up. I've got a seminar coming up about that this Saturday, actually. So I think if you aren't looking deeply enough, you've got to recognize that we are dealing with an entire hydra here. It's not just one thing. Even the GC movement, you've got to get off trans. I know there's lots of important stuff to do, and you are doing that important stuff, but you've got to stop thinking it's an isolated thing. It's all the same thing. EDI is the respectable public face of a hard left collectivist cult. Tell me I'm wrong.